Welcome, everybody. Before we start, I remind the committee and members of public that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to Facebook. This meeting is being held electronically due to COVID-19 pandemic. Precautions and measures are in place regarding social distancing to ensure the health and safety for those in attendance at the municipal office. Anyone who registered to participate in this meeting will be invited to speak in order of the applications being heard. I will now do a roll call of the committee for benefit of public watching this meeting. When I call your name, please wave at your camera and say here or present. Starting with myself, Jim Burley, I'm present. Tim Cronin.
I'm here.
Linda Dixon.
Present.
Hans Pottkapper.
Present.
Charles Seeger. Good. Raj Shah.
Here.
Nancy Thompson.
Present.
Okay. I will now provide an explanation of procedures for this meeting. Each application will be read by Nancy. Applicant will then be requested to make a brief presentation not to exceed 10 minutes. The committee will be given an opportunity to question the applicant. Any other person who has registered with the Secretary Treasurer and is wishing to address an application either for or against will then be given an opportunity to speak. Please make sure you have turned on your microphone and identify yourself clearly for the recording secretary. After everyone has had an opportunity to speak, the committee will make a decision on the application. Once discussion on your application is complete, please mute your microphone and turn off the audio. You are free to leave the meeting at this time or remain and listen to the balance of applications. At this time, I would like to draw your attention. Applicants are advised that each application has a 20-day appeal period and required under the Planning Act. The last day of appeal for applications heard here today is June 24th, 2020. At this time, I will ask if any members of the committee, if they are declaring a pecuniary conflict of interest with any of the applications.
No.
No.
If none, I will ask Nancy to read application description.
The first application today. Sorry. My mistake. The first application today is for A10-2020 Elizabeth Warner and B10-2020 Stephen and Elizabeth Warner for the properties at 2950 and 2960 Lobsinger Line in Heidelberg. Property zone settlement residential. 2950 Lobsinger Line contains a dwelling and a detached garage and storage barn. 2960 contains an office with a residential unit on the second floor. Application B10-2020, the applicant is proposing to sever an irregular shaped portion of property having an approximately 2.4 meters frontage and an approximate lot area of 530 square meters from 2950 Lobsinger's Line and conveyed as a lot addition to the adjacent property at 2960 Lobsinger Line. Subject to approval of the above noted consent application, the property at 2960 Lobsinger Line will require the following minor variances. To reduce the required lot area from 1,390 square meters to approximately 739 square meters. To reduce the required lot width from 30 meters to approximately 15 meters. And reduce the required lot frontage from 18 meters to approximately 15 meters. The proposed retained lands will contain the house and detached garage. Raj will connect Mr. Warner to speak to the application. Mr. Warner, are you there?
I'm here. Yeah. I don't see myself on the screen, but Do you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, hang on, starting my video again. Here we are. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for your time. So the brief history here is that I guess somewhere in advance of our ownerships of these properties, the building 2960 was part of a larger property that included both buildings. We moved into the house at 2950 in 1998, and about 5 or 6 years later purchased 2960, which is owned under my wife's name. When 2960 was severed off, I guess years ago, it was only severed off with a wee little bit of land around it. And in our moving forward with our selling of 2950, we've just moved to Home Sound before Christmas. We realized it probably would make more sense before we were done ownership of 2950 that we would move some land from that to make it part of 2960, make 2960 a bit more viable. When Jane came in and talked with Township planning staff earlier this year, they actually were the ones that recommended that rather than just adding a little bit of land to it, why not slice that line all the way from the Lobsinger line straight back to make 2960 a much more viable piece of property. That would then include the storage barn, which currently is part of 2950. So it inherits that little barn and then the land behind it. So that's essentially what we're doing. The timing thing that happened, of course, with COVID and the planning or your meetings being delayed because of that meant that we had to work at a negotiation with the purchasers of 2950 such that that agreement of sale would include the severance option to happen somewhere in the next 6 to 12 months. So I'm representing them now, technically, because they own it now. So that's essentially, from my end, what's happening. I don't know if there's any other questions. And I have a question which may or may not be for the committee. It might be a planning staff question, but you tell me where to go with that.
Okay. Does the committee have questions of this applicant?
Yes, I have one question. I see a well on the side of the, near the barn at the back. Which property does that old dug well end up on?
It ends up on 2960, the new parcel added to 2960.
And it's totally on this, the lot line doesn't go through the well perchance? I didn't pace it off. I just noticed that I wondered if it's going to be a concern with the lot line being so close to a well.
Oh, I don't believe it does. I haven't actually run a string from the front to the back. That was kind of a line of sight assessment that I did. That well is no longer functioning, hasn't been for years, and it is something we're actually considering having decommissioned.
Question for Raj then, Mr. Chair, through you to Raj. Do we have any planning concerns about a well that should be decommissioned on the property while it's being done to clean that up?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, we don't have any concerns. Like the applicant mentioned, the well is no longer in use and it will be decommissioned, so the plan doesn't have any concerns in regards to that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the committee? And is there any public on this that would like questions of this application?
Sorry, Mr. Warner, you mentioned you had a question perhaps for planning staff?
Yeah, and again, I don't know whether this is a question that would go back to them or to the building department, but I noticed that the application is subject to this building permit being acquired. I just wondered about that because it mentions in it a change of use / renovation to the second floor apartment as approved by a 2006 minor variance. Question was with regards to that because the building is actually zoned, 2960 is zoned residential. So a second floor apartment use should be within the scope of that. The minor variance was to allow for non-legal conforming use of the first floor commercially. So we were just kind of curious as to why a building permit would be required for something that already is part of the zoning of the building.
So, because this is more of a question for a certificate of change of use, we would probably suggest that the most appropriate division or individual to be able to provide the answer would be Dave Hiker, our chief building official.
Right, okay.
Obviously an office use, and so it would probably be best to follow up with him, and I'm happy to make those, continue that conversation with him and yourself.
Sure, that's fine. I just didn't know where that conversation needed to go. So if it's just with me and Dave, we can certainly do that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
Then I have another question of staff then, Mr. Chair. Raj, if we make this a requirement that they have a building permit to approve this minor variance, that takes out any of the conversation of whether he needs one or not. So if we're going to make it a requirement, then it has to happen no matter what. Is that correct? I'm getting out of this that we may or may not technically need a minor variance. So I'm wondering, we're putting one in there that may or may not be required?
No, the variance is still required. It's just a matter of he needs to speak with the building department in terms of what the particulars are in regards to that. The change of use certificate that's going to be needed is something that he will have to speak with the building department on.
Yeah, I have that part, but we're making it, are we not making it we're approving subject to a building permit be obtained for the second floor, and apparently that's, I guess I'm going to suggest that a building permit be obtained if required, instead of the word that it will be obtained. Does that make sense?
We're okay with that. That wording change is okay.
Yeah, that would be good, because that conversation I haven't had with Dave yet, so I'm not really sure where that stands, whether he would want to continue with that or whether that's a condition he'd want to withdraw after we talk more about it.
Sure. The wording change that Tim mentioned is okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on to the applicants?
I don't think so. Everything else was well laid out by the staff in terms of the background and the comments and recommendations, so appreciate that.
Carry on here. How would the committee like to handle this application?
Mr. Chair, I'm ready to make a recommendation that minor variance application A10-2020 Elizabeth Warner concerning the property described as Plan 603 parts lot 5 to 7 of the registered plan known as 2960 Lobsinger Line Heidelberg settlement to recognize the reduced lot area of 1390 square meters to a minimum of 739 square meters, reduce lot width from 30 meters to a minimum of 15 meters, and reduce lot frontage from 18 meters to 15 meters be approved, subject to a building permit be obtained if required for change of use renovations of second floor apartment as previously approved, and that consent application B10-2020 being approved.
Thank you. To show of hands now, all those in favor?
Need a seconder.
I'll second. Yes. We have a second. Now, do I have a show of hands, all of those in favor? Seeing that, motion is passed and approved.
Okay, and along with that, Mr. Chair, I would like to move that the consent application B10-2020 Stephen Liv Warner concerning the property described as registered plan 603 part 5 known as 2950 Lobsinger Line to sever an irregular shaped portion of property having approximately 2.4 meters frontage and approximately a lot area of 530 square meters from 2950 Lobsinger Line and convey it as a lot addition to the adjacent property at 2960 Lobsinger Line be approved, subject to the conditions: 1, the minor variance be approved, that the 2, that the purchaser take title of the severed lands in the same manner as holds the abutting land. That's section 50, subsection 3, Ontario Planning Act, amended to any subsection. Conveyance of transaction involving parcel land is subject to the consent. That the conveyance documents for the severed parcels contain a statement to ensure that section 50, subsection 3 of the Planning Act as amended shall apply to any subsequent conveyance or transaction with respect to land described herein, and a statement that consented parcel and the abutting lands with this consent parcels that it shall be dealt with contemptuously in any future conveyances or transactions unless further consent is granted under the Planning Act or other lawful order, and a copy of the reference plan shall be provided to the township.
Seconder to that.
I'll second it.
Good. All those in favor, show of hands, please. That minor variance is approved also. Move on to the next application, please.
The next application is minor variance A11-2020 for Lloyd Weaver for the property at 3975 Steffler Road. The property is zoned agricultural and contains a single detached dwelling, farm sheds, and a dairy barn. The applicant is requesting relief from section 7.2.8C to reduce the required minimum distance separation between a proposed uncovered liquid manure tank and the adjacent residence at 3791 Steffler Road from 172 meters to approximately 127 meters. New manure tank will be located to the east of the existing dairy barn. Mr. Weaver, I believe Raj has unmuted you, so if you want to speak to the application.
This is Leonard Weaver. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
I'm Lloyd's son. I'm currently living in 3791 Steffler Road, and my mom owns the property in 3791. My dad owns the property up, and I'm his son, and we're currently planning on maybe transferring the farm into my name this year yet, so that's why I'm doing my variance part of it, and we're going forward making changes too. So that's all that I got to say today.
Does the committee have any questions of Mr. Weaver?
Questions?
Yes, Linda, you have a question? No questions, no comments? And I guess there's hard to see, but there's nobody from the audience here, so we'll carry on. How would the committee handle this application?
Mr. Chairman, I move that, it's Linda Dixon here. I move that minor variance application A11-2020 for Lloyd Weaver concerning the property known municipally as 3795 Steffler Road to recognize our reduced required minimum distance separation between a proposed uncovered liquid manure tank and the adjacent residence at 3791 Steffler Road from 172 meters to 127 meters be approved.
I will second that.
Okay, seconder. As all those in favor? Very good. This motion is passed and approved.
The next application is minor variance application A12-2020 for Elmira Photo Lab Inc. for the property located at 76 Howard Avenue in Elmira. The property is zoned general industrial urban M2 with site-specific provisions and contains a theater and photo studio. The applicant is requesting relief from section 21.3.4 to reduce the required rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 2 meters in order to permit the construction of a multi-unit industrial building. Tina, if you'd like to speak to the application, unless Bram is speaking on your behalf, I'm not sure.
I can just expand, just saying that just we're requesting the relief from the section 21.3.4, just to allow for construction of the industrial building. This will accommodate additional parking and fire route.
Yeah, I don't have any much further to contribute to that. This is more to accommodate the development request to get the fire route turning radius to work, to get the required parking to work. And the loading areas and the apron in front of the proposed building. So the request is simplistic in nature, but those.
That's all you had?
I have a question for the applicant. One of the requirements here is the installation of fence around the rear yard of this property. Is there not a fence there now?
Yes, there is.
So whose fence is there now? Is that the neighbors or your fence, or why are they asking for another fence?
I'm assuming it's the neighbors. It was there when we bought the building.
Okay, can I ask Raj if that fence is okay, or why do we need another one?
Just want to ensure that the fence remains there. So if it's the neighbors, that's fine. But we just want to ensure that post-construction, the fence does remain around the rear yard.
So can we change?
And we've actually installed another fence along the side, so it's even better defined now.
Okay.
So-
Yep. That was your.
Can we change that from installation of a fence, that a fence be maintained around the rear of the property?
Fine.
I'd support that too, Tim.
Any further questions to the applicant or comments?
Mr. Chairman, it's Linda Dixon again. No questions. I think the question's been answered. I was wondering why I had driven around the back, lots of room. Just wondering why the rear yard setback couldn't be maintained, but it sounds like you're still trying to maintain sufficient area, as you said, for the fire route and parking. So in order to do that, you have to push the building back. Is that the understanding is correct there?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll ask Ian, any further comments from the committee members? But then I'd like to know, how would the committee like to handle this application?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for application A12-2020 Elmira Photolab Inc. Be approved, subject to a fence around the rear yard being maintained.
Seconded by Hans. Show of hands for all in favor. I have that. Yes. Application is now approved.
No. So the next application is 1120 Zinger. Located at St. Charles Street West in Maryhill. Property zoned agricultural conditions to continue to school. The applicant is requesting permission to 0.2 hectare St. Charles Street West and convey it as a lot addition to the adjacent home at 170 St. Charles Street West. The retained lands at 148 St. Charles Street West will be approximately 0.3 hectares in area and will contain a single detached dwelling and garage. Sam, if you'd like to speak to the application.
Go ahead.
Yes, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Okay. The audio is breaking up a bit. So can you hear me?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. This property is owned by Cyril Zinger, Doug's father, who passed away. And he willed the property to Doug, his son, who lives next door. Doug would like to keep the farmland portion of the property, about 9 hectares, and sever off the second house. He doesn't need 2 houses, so He's going to sell the second house, and when he does, he's going to split the proceeds between his sister, who is entitled to some of the estate. The township passed the amending bylaw to allow the two lots to be created. And once we create them, we're basically creating the same configuration of lots we had before. We're having a house on a lot, and we're having a house with a small acreage attached to it. I've reviewed the recommendations with my client, and we're both in support of the recommendations. And I sent an email to Raj indicating that we're in support of the recommendations as noted in the information I received from the township. So I'll be happy to answer any questions of the committee at this time. And this is certainly a new adventure for me in dealing with public meetings. So any questions of the committee?
Yes, I will call that. Any comments or questions?
Questions?
No questions.
No. No questions. Okay, this time, ask the committee how they would like to handle this application.
Mr. Chairman, it's Linda Dixon here. I'll move that consent application B11-2020 for the state of Cyril Zinger concerning the property known municipally as 148 Charles Street West, sever 9.2 hectares from a property and convey it as a lot addition to the adjacent land located at Charles Street West be approved, subject to the 3 conditions as set out in the staff recommendation report.
Hans, you be the seconder. Now I show hands, all in favor. I do have that. I will say that this B11-2020 be approved with those conditions.
Okay, the last application today is consent application B13-2020 for Peter, Paul, and Jim Brubaker for the property located at 62 Center Street, Elmira. The property is zoned residential mixed medium density and contains a single detached dwelling and accessory building. The application was previously approved in April 2019 as consent B5-2019, but has lapsed. The applicant is requesting permission to sever an irregular shaped parcel of land measuring approximately 21 by 24 meters and being approximately 470 square meters in area from the rear of 62 Center Street for the purpose of creating a new vacant residential lot on full municipal services. The retained lands will measure approximately 20 by 28.5 meters, being approximately 576 square meters in area and contain the existing dwelling. And I should note, I mentioned accessory building, which has already been demolished. Pete, if you'd like to speak to the application.
Not much to say. I'd just like to reapply as I was not able to meet the conditions for servicing the lot. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Is there any comments from the committee for this?
Mr. Chairman.
So-
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Linda.
Here, just question. So understand that it was approved and it's lapsed. So sometimes we look at these, or I look at them and think, is there some prematurity to them? So you mentioned, Mr. Brubaker, that it was due to some servicing. Are those issues now resolved and you'd be able to proceed?
Not quite yet. We have, part of the servicing package is to apply to the MOE for MECP approval. We applied last year. We still have not had our turn to get approved. So we're hoping it comes soon, but as of yet, no.
What's that approval from the Ministry of the Environment for?
It's for, because my understanding is that it's for the servicing of the lot, because it is on municipal property to service, to extend the services on the road to supply the new parcel.
I think it's number 6 condition, Linda.
Yeah, I didn't realize that that was going to be required either until we got into this, but.
That's just unusual, that's all.
Any further comments from the committee? Seeing none, I would ask the committee how they would like to handle the issue at this time.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that motion for application B13 2020 be approved with the recommendations from staff for 1 through 8.
We have a seconder to that motion. Seconded by Linda.
Yes, sorry, I should have said seconder.
Show of hands again. All those in favor? All those in favor? I would now like to say that that is approved. And I also want to remind you of our appeal period in June 24.
Okay, that concludes the applications. Before we move into the minutes, I just wanted to make one note. There was a question raised with respect to clarity on Ezra Baker's 3 Catherine Street. So the wording with respect to the buggy shed and whether or not it included the horses. So I just wanted to advise the committee that the recent agricultural amendment that was passed made some modifications to the wording of the MDS such that horse barns for the purposes of transportation, where the horses are purpose of transportation, are exempt from MDS. So that will then prevent any future use of that barn for livestock purposes. It's defined as to be, I believe it was just for the buggy shed and farm equipment. The concern was that a future owner may in fact move livestock in because it said buggy shed and maybe the implication for livestock. But it is explicit to say horses for transportation. So it's more just a clarity. If we want to change made in the minutes, we can. But I think it's sufficient that the wording in the bylaw itself will be okay for moving forward there. Were there any other changes to the minutes or anything that the committee wanted to question?
Not I.
No questions, no current concerns.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented then.
I'll second it. Third it, fourth it.
Pick.
Charles, were you the seconder there? Sorry, I missed that.
I definitely will second that.
Yes. So all in favor of those minutes? Seeing no opposition, I would now adjourn the virtual meeting.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming.
If everybody could just stay on for one more second. Well,